I'm Evan Haining.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries with you, talking to you just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as always, at Fridays at this time. Today we have our first return visitor, and it's appropriate that he was the first guest on the first edition of I Protest. A legend in show business, a man I'm still flabbergasted to call him my friend, and certainly honored to call him my friend. John Barbour has been in show business for longer than just about anybody that's still around. And he's going to be talking about, I think, mostly his new book that's coming out, his memoir, which is Your Mother's Not a Virgin, The Bumpy Life and Times of the Canadian Dropout Who Changed the Face of American TV. We'll also fit some JFK stuff in there because I know he's at a conference now. So we're going to talk about that. And so, John, welcome to the show.
Oh, Donald, I'm so delighted to be back here talking to you again, and I'm also honored to be the opening act for Dustin Nemos, who I admire greatly. Just a really bright young man, and I'm happy to say he's got the #5 book on Amazon. Well, mine is way, way back there, so maybe you can talk him into having me on the show so that I can raise my book up a little bit. And I must say, I am really, really, really deeply honored that you wrote such a brilliant introduction to the book, even though you were not the first choice. The first person who was going to do it was Harlan Ellison. And Harlan Ellison, do you know who Harlan is?
Yeah, well, I know he was a hell of a science fiction writer and wrote Terminator and all that. Yeah, it's a fantastic guy. Certainly great talent.
Well, let me tell you a cute little story about Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison, along with Ray Bradbury and Nabokov, the best science fiction writer in America. But he always considered himself a writer. And when he was in college, his professor failed him, told he'd never become a writer. From that moment on to the day that Harlan died, every time he sold a script or a book or anything, he always sent a copy to that professor. It's like Donald Trump with his small hand story. In any event, and speaking of Terminator, Paramount plagiarized that story, and they turned it into the film that starred Arnold Schwarzenegger, the son of the Nazi. Okay, so Harlan wanted to sue. He was so angry and protective of his work, and his wife and his agents and managers and publicists said, "Don't sue, please. You will never work in this town again." He said, "No, I'm suing." He sued, and he won. Then he spent bunches of thousands of dollars from his winnings on a huge billboard that he put up at Sunset and Doheny, and it says, "I beat the bastards." And beyond that, he was never busier in his life. Anyway, the little sidebar story about him. In 1969, I was signed by Westinghouse to be Merv Griffin's replacement. He was going to go to CBS to do a late-night show. And so I got to fill in for him for one night, and my ratings were surprisingly good. And Westinghouse used my ratings. They had been negotiating with an Englishman named David Frost. And they were using my ratings as a wedge to get them to lower their price. In any event, Harlan was working for the Los Angeles Free Press, and he had the second best critics column about television in America. It was appropriately called the Glass Teat. Is that a great name for a column?
Yes,
Sucking on television for intellectual nutrition.
Yeah.
Anyway, he reviews me. And he says, where did Westinghouse ever get this fairy faggot to replace Merv Griffin? Oh, my God, it was savage. But it was hilarious. It truly was funny. Well, Chuck Young, who was the head of Metro Media, did not feel that Westinghouse would be successful when they signed Frost. So he called me and asked me if I'd do a late night version of the Johnny Carson show, because he felt that once Frost bombed, that Westinghouse would call me back, and he wanted to have me under contract, and I agreed. And I wanted, as my first guest, somebody to talk about television, because it is the umbilical cord that unifies America, could nourish America, which it once did, or it could destroy America, which it is now doing. And so I said to the producer, I'm going to call Harlan and book him. And he said, John, gee, don't do that. He hates you. I said, but he's so bright, I don't care. So he said, well, you call him. I'm not calling. So I get Harlan's phone number and I call. On the second ring, he answers. He always sounded angry. Hello, he said. And I said, Harlan, this is John Barbour. And he blurts out.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Kind of what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay, he blurts out, holy shit. And I said, hold it, you already called me that once. So he laughed. And I said, can you talk as well as you write? And he said, certainly I can. And I said, I want to book you on my show. You're the first guest I want to book. He said, are you pulling my leg? He said, no. I believe that television is really important, and you're very articulate about it. So I book him on the show, and of course the ratings are terrific because everybody in show business in Hollywood knows him, knows what he said about me, and they watch the show. The next day I get a call from Chuck Young late in the afternoon, and he's chuckling. And he congratulates me on the ratings, and I thank him. And he said, Harlan Ellison just left the office. I said, oh, that's wonderful of you giving him a show. Well, he starts to laugh. And he said, no. And I said, why not? He deserves one. He said he wants your show. He said, get rid of that fairy and give me the show. Well, my show did not last, but I had 6 other talk shows, Donald. Yeah. And the first person I always called to book on the show was Harlan Ellison.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's that's wonderful. You showed that not only can you have good TV or good radio with people that disagree with you, but and you ended up respecting him so much. He was your first choice to write the foreword, and then everybody else died on you pretty much except me. So you were relegated to having me write it eventually.
But the truth is, I think because Neil Simon was the other choice, but the truth is your introduction and your review of the book as you introduce it is so thorough and so smart and so intelligent. And I think that Harlan or probably even Neil might have gone on in a different direction. People will understand the book once they read your introduction. So thank you again.
I was honored to do, and I'm even happier that you liked it, because I said when reading the book, I thought, this is I'm not used to. I have a pretty good opinion on my writing ability, but normally someone like yourself who's been in the business so many years and wrote for good television shows in the past, and I know how you can write, and I saw the quality as I'm reading it, and I'm saying, God, am I up to this?
Whoops.
Gratifying. That you think you lost me?
Once in a while, there's a little dropout, but that happens on Skype.
Yeah, Skype. I have issues with this almost every week. So you're in Olney, Illinois now. We'll talk about the book too, but whatever you want to talk about most. But right now you're at a conference, the JFK conference, and you're going to be speaking there and promoting your film. I think, not your book more. But so you want to talk about that, where you are now, and promote that some.
I'm proud to be here at Olney because I think it's going to be the best JFK conference ever, and hopefully it will be the last one. And the next time that these people assemble, they will assemble outside the John F. Kennedy Justice Department and demand that they reopen, which is already a cold case. But I am honored to be here because there's some really, really fabulous speakers. I can't wait to hear what they have to say, and I can't wait to hear what I have to say. They're going to be, some of them are going to be staying over on Monday night where they're going to screen the film, and I will stay afterwards to do a question and answer. But, you know, one of the reasons I guess I mentioned the Harlan Ellison story, because I have said that I'm the only person that I know of who I believe has a truly open mind. And a lot of people say, well, it's open because it's empty. Well, that may be true. But what it is empty of, it is empty of a belief. I don't believe in anything. I either know something, Donald, or I don't know something.
Exactly.
I don't believe in anything because it's been my experience when I see people who believe in something. It could be a god, or it could be a politician, it could be anything. And somebody else comes along with an equally bright argument as to why that person may be wrong. They will not even consider looking at it or listening to it. And so my belief vanished from me when I was a 12-year-old child praying that my father would come home from the house that he abandoned to go to the peace and wild quiet of World War II. But the reason I also mentioned the business about Harlan, it suddenly occurs to me as I talk to you about this, that I almost must be the only person in show business who is devoid of an ego.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have no interest in being famous. I never did have interest in being famous. It was my work I loved, and I wanted to share my work because my work was my life, because that was my only family. And the place that I could share it, hopefully, would be on television. And so that's why I got into it. But I didn't get into it for any purposes of ego. And I didn't even know that necessarily that I had any talent to do that. I was just inspired by two people in American television. One was Jack Paar, by far the greatest late night talk show host ever in the history of television. He opened his show with a monologue. And so I became a monologist, a comic, because that's how they opened it. But the reason I admired Parr so much is he actually had conversations with people. And up until that time, I'm telling you, Donald, I thought people either punched one another or they yelled at me.
Yeah. Well, and part of it, for those of you, I hope everyone will check out this book, because it's a unique combination of the childhood you're describing, and I compared it to David Copperfield. You had kind of a Dickensian childhood where you did go through a lot of hell, and that's why you ran away. You know, people usually run away from something they don't run away from good circumstances. And you ended up overcoming all kinds of odds, and of course that's a lot of the story, is how you managed to get in the position in show business back in pretty much the golden age of television almost is when you started. And then you somehow down the road ended up entering my world, the JFK assassination research world, where we first kind of intersected, and came up with the first. You were the first guy and the only guy, I think, to interview Jim Garrison after the Clay trial, and that eventually culminated in your fantastic video, which is I think you'll be showing at this Olney conference, the American meeting, the second assassination of John F. Kennedy. So it's a real great combination of show business and the JFK assassination world.
And you know what it is, Donald? It all happened by accident. It was all totally unplanned. I've had all these amazing, amazing things happen to me quite by accident. And while all of the disasters I've encountered were all well planned, and life seems to be that way. Look at Donald Trump's wall was well planned. The Mueller report was well planned. Hillary's victory speech was well planned. The Watergate break-in was well planned. It's only an accident they got Nixon, and my son is an accident. So there you go. And when it comes to the Mueller thing, it is so pathetically obvious. If there is a God, I must tell you, God, a he or a she, must prefer the way the Russian government operates when they're taking over a country compared to how the United States operates, because the Russians, I don't know, the Russians operate by using a computer and social media. We do it with assassins and soldiers and bullets, for crying out loud. Yeah. What Americans are going to have to get used to is that millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump. They voted for Richard Nixon. They voted for Lyndon Johnson. They voted for George Bush. They voted for Clinton, and Clinton, by far the worst president in American history, just for signing the Communications Act that took all the media out of the hands of the American public and put it in the hands of 6 corporations. And then they voted for Obama. Now look at this. There's Trump, and there's Johnson, there's Clinton, there's Bush. We started out with Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Andrew Jackson, and John Kennedy. It seems to me like that's Darwin in reverse.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not evolving. That's definitely devolving. Yeah, it's hard to believe that we've gone from Thomas Jefferson to Donald Trump. What is the difference in intellect alone is just staggering. It's amazing what the I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was interrupted because you talked about intellect. One of my favorite quotes of John Kennedy's was from 1962. He was hosting a dinner at the White House for 24 of America's leading artists and intellects. And he says, never has so much brain power and intelligence been assembled in one room since Thomas Jefferson dined alone.
Yeah. It's one of my
and
favorite.
So I'm thinking of hopefully paraphrasing that when I'm introduced, because we have a dozen absolutely brilliant speakers on the political assassinations of the 60s. And I might say that never have so many dedicated, knowledgeable truth seekers and truth-telling researchers been assembled in one room who can talk about the political assassinations since Mae Brussel broadcast by herself.
There you go. That would be great.
So there you go. Maybe I'll use that. And, to this day, I listen to Mae Brussel once a month because they become more powerful and more pertinent as years go by, more prophetic. I also try to take out 5 minutes a month to listen to Bill Hicks. And you know what? As you think about it, George Orwell's prediction from 1984 about society ending up as a spied upon security state where every American citizen will be spied upon, as Ed Snowden claims. That has become truer than ever. So maybe tonight I'll be feeling good speaking into a microphone that I can see.
Are you speaking tonight? Is that your speeches tonight?
Yeah, as soon as I finish with you, I got to go over there. I have no idea what I'm going to say.
Well, that's the best kind. Talking off the cuff. That's wonderful. And that's the sign of a really great speaker and a keen mind to be able to do that. I have more respect for improv. It's kind of an improv thing. I love improv people because I think that just is a kind of intelligence and skill that a lot of people don't have to be able to talk off. Most people are teleprompter readers, even your politicians. But to be able to talk off the cuff like that is a real skill.
And there were three comedians who could do that absolutely better than anyone. Of course, that's Robin Williams, Jonathan Winters, and of course, Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks, the only comedian in America with the talent and intelligence to be able to make jokes about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
And the only one with guts to talk. I mean, and that's why he got the attention of so many people, because he was. And it's interesting. I don't know if you know some of the story behind him, but he was one of my least favorite entertainers is Dennis Leary, who I think is an unfunny kind of bully comedian, typical mean-spirited comedian. Well, Bill Hicks and him kind of came up together, and Hicks really got ticked off at him because Leary was stealing his material constantly, and they had a falling out because of that. You know, I know that's happens frequently in the world of stand-up comedy, but what's interesting is that one part of his act he didn't steal was the JFK assassination stuff. Dennis Leary, like every other comedian, stayed away from that.
Yeah, he didn't have the courage to attack it. But again, look at Bill Hicks. His career sort of paralleled Mark Lane's, because Mark Lane did not get Rush to Judgment published in America. It was published in the United Kingdom, and he only got $1,500. And Bill Hicks became a rock star in England.
Yeah.
And of course, Bill Hicks was a smoker, and he died of pancreatic cancer. And I've always been somewhat suspicious of that. It should have been lung cancer, but I don't talk about that. But he was absolutely and totally beyond genius. And it looked like he was getting ready, close to the time he died, to actually quit the business of doing stand-up.
Yeah, well, he would just imagine, because that was when the internet was still, I guess, kind of in its infancy. So imagine what he might have done if he had kept on. I mean, he certainly could have probably hosted a fantastic podcast that would have had a lot more listeners than I could ever hope to get, and that kind of thing. Who knows what he would have done? But I think he would have, because he might have gravitated. He seemed to be questioning a lot of things, and I think most of us, certainly with my experience, when you start out questioning the Warren Commission and you go down that road, it's hard not to keep opening the other doors that are associated with it. From there, you go to MLK, RFK, and further on down till you hit 9/11 and Waco and Oklahoma City and everything.
That's great that you say that, because last week I was in Laughlin to the largest UFO convention ever held in America. And two of the featured speakers, George Noory from Coast to Coast and George Knapp from Coast to Coast. But the lady who organized it, Laurie Ann Fenton, said that a lot of people were curious to see my movie because some of the people in that community think the same forces are at work that shut down information about Kennedy, and they shut down information about UFOs. So I screened it there, and somebody asked me, well, this is a UFO convention. Do you think this is appropriate? And I said, UFO, what you're going to see here is uncovered fascist operations. UFO. So they cheered.
Hell yeah! And anybody, I have a book in me down the road on that. I've started to kind of put it in the back burner about the kind of thing I wrote about in the Unreal. I gave my first interview about the Unreals with Richard Syrett, who I understand is going to have you on Coast soon. I was on his show the other day.
Oh, good. Oh, go, keep going.
Well, no, I was saying that's the first time anybody, the Unreals was published in 2007, the first time I've given an interview about that. So I was really happy because that not only talked about my fiction, which was what I intended to be, was a novelist. I kind of went into nonfiction by accident, as you would say, because I got fed up with not being able to get more of my fiction published. So it ended up being a lot easier to do that. But in the Unreals, I talk a lot about the Fortean unexplained phenomena, UFOs, because that was my other baby. You know, when I was a young man, I was reading JFK assassination books, UFO books, Bermuda Triangle books, that kind of stuff. Charles Fort's books. That they were kind of competing in my mind for attention. But so I was
Donald. Everybody asked me about 9/11, about JFK. Because myself and Godfrey Isaacs, who was Thomas Noguchi's attorney back in the 80s, formed the Citizens Commission to save Thomas Noguchi as the independent coroner of Los Angeles, California. I may mention, I tell the story in the book, but I never talk about it in public. And people ask me, why not? And I said, listen, I do not want to shine a light on the assassinations or 9/11. I want to shine a laser beam on the murder of John Kennedy, because that is the linchpin. You unravel that and everything else is revealed. The same forces killed him. They killed Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and probably John Lennon, probably John Kennedy Jr., and you'll all the way down to 9/11. But you have to focus, and I will only focus on that because I am telling Jim Garrison's story. And that's all Jim Garrison was interested in. He did not care who the shooters were, even though he named them. He didn't care how much they were paid, even though he knew how much they were paid by E. Howard Hunt. He was after the planners. And that's why I don't get bothered with any of the other stuff, because I've been chosen to be his Boswell, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Well, it's great, and you're more focused than me too. I'm kind of all over the place, so it's great. You can and you certainly, between that and your memoir where you talk about the entertainment world, you're leaving a lot out there for people to sift through, and it's just I hope people that are listening that may not know, younger people might not know about your career, look him up on IMDb and Google him, because this guy is fantastic. We'll talk more about your whatever you want to talk about, show business background, the Jim Garrison stuff, but we're just about coming up to a break now. So decide how you want to go with in the last half hour, and what you want to concentrate on, because there's so many things we can talk about, but I want to focus on what you want to focus on. And there's some music. So we'll be right back in a couple minutes with show business legend John Barbour.
Out of the airplane stepped Chamberlain with a condemned man to stare. But we all cheered wildly. A photograph was taken as he waved a piece of paper in the air.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
I'm sick and tired of hearing things from uptight, short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. I've had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. No short-head, yellow-bellied son of tricky dick is gonna mother Hubbard's up so meager, just a pocket full of holes. Money for dough. Money for road.
And welcome back with a guest who definitely all he wants is the truth, John Barbour. We're talking to. So, John, what direction do you want to go in here? I mean, you and I can just talk again about anything. So, whatever you want to talk about, it'll be fascinating. So, tell me what you want to talk about, what you'd like to.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on having some commercials. That is terrific. So that means that you might be making some money eventually doing this. And as I was thinking about it, I may have to, I'm supposed to speak, I guess, for about 45 minutes. And I may have to forewarn the audience that I'm going to give them a lot of very, very, very bad news, which means unlike the government and the media, I'm going to be telling them the truth. so anyway, I'm just so excited, and I'm excited about the book. Tell you one quick story about the book. In 1992, I was in Canada, in Vancouver, British Columbia, most beautiful city in North America, doing a show called The Liars Club, and it was produced by a fellow named Blair Murdoch. And Blair was an extremely smart guy when it came to computers, and he created apps and whatever those people do. When he sold his company, he was a mega millionaire. Like a lot of people, he wants to get into show business. There was an old show on television called The Liars Club. He called me to co-host it. I was a panelist along with Shannon Tweed, who eventually married Gene Simmons, and a really gorgeous and very, very bright lady. In any event, Blair sent me an email saying that he had ordered the book from Amazon. It's not out till my birthday, April 24th. And he sent this months ago, and he said, am I in it? And I sent him back a note. Well, I had to hit out 300 pages, so I get it down to under 800. You might be on the cutting room floor. and so he said, well, that's okay. I can't wait to read it anyway. So I reread my own book. And I love to reread it because I can't even remember writing some of this stuff. I feel like I'm channeling Mark Twain sometimes. And there I come across Blair Murdoch and the story of the Liars Club, which is really cute because I still get fan mail from the Yukon where it is still running. So in any event, he slips in an email telling me that he has 4th-stage pancreatic cancer, kidney cancer. Jeez. And I thought, oh, my God, I can't have him wait till April 24th to read the book. He might not even be there. So I took the last book I had. I autographed it to him, and I sent it Federal Express, so he got it the next day. Last week, I got an email from him, and he's in Mexico, where he has another home and probably goes for chelation or chemotherapy or whatever those people do. And I must tell you, Donald, if I had cancer, I would not be reading anybody's autobiography, even if it was written by Moses or Jesus himself. I'd be looking at books on how to cure cancer with fruit or vegetables or dirt or whatever. But he sent me the loveliest note. He said, your book is saving my life. Wow. I'm still going to keep the order from Amazon because I want to gift it to a friend. I want to gift it to my children. And then he said, but most of all, I want to write a review because if I buy it from Amazon, I get to write a review. The first review went up on Amazon because a lady who could not wait Kindled the book. And I think it cost $10 or $11 to Kindle the book. She wrote this unbelievable rave spot on reviews. Because one of the things that she says, now, you know, there are no book chapters. The book has a beginning and a middle and end, but it has hundreds of stories all the way through it. There's the main story, of which is this David Copperfield, Canadian rags to American riches story. But along the way, these hundreds of other stories. So it's assembled like Ben Heck's A Child of the Century, where every few pages there's a column, like a newspaper column. And she said, you can pick it up anywhere. You can open it, something that you might be interested and have a fantastic read. Well, I'm telling you, it's such a spot-on review. I've had people ask me if I wrote the review. Well, I did not. I did not write the review. And so I can't wait for the release of the book. The other thing I can't wait for, when I leave here, I go to the book fair in Los Angeles, a couple of appearances in Los Angeles. And then after that, I hope to engage a very, very bright lady publicist in Canada to do PR there, because I want to spend 3 weeks going from Montreal to Toronto to Vancouver, any other city, because as the prodigal son returning, I remember I lived there when I was 16 or 17 to be a professional gambler in the United States and deported twice. And now I'm going back legal as this expatriate Canadian. And it's, you know, hometown boy makes good. And I think if I get any decent exposure, I could make this a deserved bestseller, which of course would please me no end for my family, and especially for Chris Milligan, who was the guy who took a chance on publishing it. And the reason he published it, aside from the fact that he's a huge fan of the Garrison stuff and the Kennedy stuff, and he publishes some of the best conspiracy books ever, is he wants to go a little more mainstream. He has a book coming out called Reconsidering Vietnam, which is a great title. Mm-hmm. And that it should be a mainstream book. There are a number of his books that should be mainstream, and he has published twice as many of my books as any of the others because he hopes, like Elvis Presley doing black music, he will cross over. He's hoping he'll cross over into the mainstream, and I hope it happens for him.
Well, I hope it happens for you. If anybody, I mean, if there's any justice, it will be a bestseller. But what you told me a while back was something. It's still, and I've told people about it. I told my wife, who's a big fan of yours, my sister, who I've talked to you a lot about, is very interested in you. I showed her your book and everything, and the copy that you kindly sent to me and autographed. But I found it incredible that it's somebody with your career. This is somebody, for the fans that don't know, this is a guy who was a stand-up comedian, competing, I guess, with people like George Carlin and people like that back in the day, who had liner notes to your comedy album written by Dick Gregory and Neil Simon. These were huge names, and you were Frank Sinatra's personal writer for like 6 years, and you were the host not only of a slew, and the readers can find, I mean, just I couldn't keep track of all the shows you had briefly and lost or were gonna get, and it was it shows how show business is, how you get your hopes up, and eventually you hit with Real People, which was the #1 show on television for 3 years. You were the host, one of the hosts, and the creator. So for anybody who's had all that, not to mention interviewing Jim Garrison, you told me that the most exciting thing to you personally ever was holding your book in your hand and the book. And I'm fascinated by that as a writer, because I'm thinking, I never having hosted any television show, let alone the #1 show, I would think that would be more exciting. But I was fascinated by that.
It's absolutely and totally true. And my wife said to me, when I left Real People, over a confrontation with George Slaughter, who deliberately re-edited my Garrison story and literally illegally slandered him. We almost got into a fist fight, and I lost Real People. But at that time, I was making $20,000 an hour. And I've had a lot of people ask me, well, don't you miss the fame and don't you miss the money? And the only two things I miss, Donald, are this. First of all, I miss getting a great seat in a good restaurant, because no matter how busy it was, once they saw Real People Barbour walk in, oh, Mr. Barbour, your table's over here. But the other thing is, we were getting 20,000 pieces of mail a week. I missed making people happy, giving people of unusual backgrounds or hobbies or occupations a chance to tell the world their story uninterrupted. Some people might think it was funny, or some would be serious, but it was explaining them. It was not exploiting them. So I missed that. And then the same with the Gong Show. I was the first person gonged on the Gong Show. And my wife said to me, if you had continued Real People, it would still be America's #1 show. But look at, you have done something far more important for America. You have done the Garrison tapes, part 1 and 2, the most important movies ever made in this country, next to Oliver Stone's JFK. His has an actor. You have the real Jim Garrison. And then I'll tell you a cute story. When I was a critic in the 70s at NBC, there were two sisters, the Chris Luce and her sister. I thought she was 16 when she was actually 20. And her younger sister, I thought, was 13 when she was actually 16 or 17. Once a month, they would ride a bike from Long Beach, California, to Burbank Studios to come in as my guest to sit and just listen to the reviews and meet me. And they did this for a couple of years. She got into the business. She became an executive at CBS, retired about 9 years ago into Hawaii, has a great pension. And she wrote me the sweetest note when she retired, saying that she would never forgive me because I was such an inspiration to her. She had to get into the business, became an executive at CBS, and met nothing but jerks. And she would not forgive me for that. She was curious when she heard that I was writing the book. She was the second person to whom I wrote a book because she wrote a crime novel herself when she retired, quite a successful crime novel. I wish I could post that on Facebook, and eventually I think I will. And she said, John, as much as I loved Real People, and as much as I am so thrilled that you did the Garrison tapes, she said, the reason I loved your book is the reason it is more important than anything that you have ever done is the reason that I fell in love with you when I was 22. Unlike what you say in the book, I was not 16. I was 22. She said it was your writing. Well, you want to know something, Donald? I'm in the Writers Guild, and I never considered the reason I wrote jokes when I wanted to be a stand-up and be like Jack Parr is I got all these joke books, and I thought, well, I'll steal 5 minutes material and get up. And they were all dreadful, and I thought, gee, I can do better than that. I didn't even know I could write. I wrote my first 5-minute act in 10 minutes. It just poured out of me, and I have no idea, indeed, where it came from. I never considered myself a writer, but I wrote because that's what I had to do when I was a critic. I had to write. But it was my opinion, and this is how I expressed it. And even you're a writer. You're a real writer because you write real books. I'm not a real writer. I'm just a guy who writes. And the reason that I wrote this is I kept getting pestered first by Jeff Rentz to tell these stories on paper. And then a guy named James Griffith, who was a relation of Andy Griffith and the Griffith family in L.A.
Really?
And he had a boutique publishing company. So in any event, he used to call after every one of these Jeff Rentz shows and say, put it on paper. And I said, well, I just don't have the time. And he said, then he read my birth date to me. And he said, you better take time before it's too late. So I started 6 years ago, and I finished a year ago, and then quite by accident had it published by Trine Day and Chris Milligan. And my instincts tell me it's word of mouth that's going to make it a hit. The same way word of mouth is making the American media in the second assassination of President John F. Kennedy a monster hit. And you know why? That movie is a hit. I get no help from the mainstream media. I only get help from 2 or 3 people in the assassination community, also infiltrated by Project Mockingbird. Yeah. That help comes from QAnon. That help comes from the people like Dustin Nemos and Sean at the SGT report.
Yes. Because
these people are convinced, and it may be absolutely true, that the same forces, the deep state that murdered John Kennedy, is out to do the same to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is being disrupted almost every day. Now, we don't know if it's a deep state. They're convinced it is. We don't know if it's the media. We don't know if it's because the Council of Foreign Relations or the Skull and Bones or whoever it is. But obviously, Donald Trump, like John Kennedy, was not part of the families that owned the country. And so that's where do you know, after appearing on one of Sean's shows and Dustin's shows, in 1 month, 4,000 people bought that film. And I think that will happen. And I hope I get to be on Sean's show again soon, now that he's moved to Florida and is living on a houseboat.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Yeah, I hope that he hopefully have him on the show. Yeah, he's got a huge audience, and I'm with you. I never sold more books than I did being other than maybe Coast to Coast, but that's the only other thing that I've had, like that. It's amazing.
Well, isn't Dustin your second guest tonight?
Yes, well, Dustin's going to be on. Yeah, and Dustin has a nice big audience too. Like Sarah Westall's another one that has their audiences are growing. And
I love Sarah too. She's absolutely terrific. Well, you tell Dustin that you were talking to me and that I want to come back on because he is involved in something that he only hinted at. It had to be something. It's some kind of I don't know if it's JFK conference, but it's something that he's going to be a part of. And he asked me if I would co-chair it or co-host it with him. And I told him I'd be honored to do so. Absolutely, especially to his audience. But I hope I get on within the next month or so to spend an hour with him to having some fun talking.
Oh, I'm
about
sure you will. I'll prompt him, but I know he likes you a lot.
So anyway,
His audience likes you. I mean, people are fascinated by you because you're gonna be 86 later this month, and you have so much energy. I'm 62 and I have pretty good energy for my age, but when we're talking, I feel like I'm talking to another young guy because you're not. Most people at 86 are kind of riding things out, but you're always planning things and looking. What can I do?
There are very few people 86. They don't last that long. As a matter of fact. So what is the expression when a guy's had too many drinks at the bar? What does a bartender say to him?
Hey, you've had enough?
No, you're going to be 86th.
Oh, okay, that's right.
That's the expression. So while I was writing the book, I kept thinking about Mark Twain, because Mark Twain was born when Halley's Comet dashed through the universe, and he always thought that he would expire the day it dashed through again, 75 years later. And indeed he did on the day it reappeared. Right? Okay, so I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, listen, I'm afraid to get to the end of this and write the end in case God thinks it's time to 86 the kid,
No, so I think you got a lot of time ahead of you. You seem to be in great shape. Certainly mentally you are. You're very sharp, and you got the mind of a much younger guy.
Well, the thing, partially, and this is very true, I'm asked all the time, what on earth keeps you young? First of all, I never think about it. I still think I'm that same kid who was lost in Canada, for crying out loud. Yeah. He's still with me. You never get rid of that.
Yeah.
But I just, it's rage. It's not a pill. It's not health foods. It's rage, because there is so much to be angry about. When I asked Jim Garrison on September 5th, 1981, how he ever thought he would take on the American government, aside from saying, John, I guess as a kid, I saw one too many Frank Capra movies. Right now, I am under the mistaken impression I'm living in the country I was born in.
Yeah.
That was in 1981. And now look at this. In 1977 is when Senator John Tunney handed me my citizenship papers, and Charo sang the national anthem to me. It doesn't get any better than that. But you know what? I am not living in the country that I became a citizen of. It's changed entirely, and I am hoping. It's just what is happening. The Democratic Party is totally and absolutely non-existent. Joe Biden, oh my God, all the people they're putting up, it's like the waiting list at Forest Lawn.
Really?
I was a strong fan of course, Bernie Sanders, because during the debates, he was the only one who brought up student loans or Wall Street corruption or fake wars or Palestine or any of that. And ending all of that. So I'm very sympathetic to him. And he had 12 million voters, and Donald Trump had 12 million voters, and I think Hillary Clinton had 350. That was about it. But Donald Trump's voters were all older. Yeah. And Bernie Sanders, 72, half of his voters were under the age of 25. Now, these people do not know about Vietnam or Iraq or the Cold War or any of that, but they know something is wrong with America.
Sure, they didn't live in the America that you certainly lived in, and I, as a late baby boomer, I lived in it. I try to tell people about this.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a different country.
I wrote a scathing attack of Bernie Sanders, accusing him of not walking his talk, constitutional talk, caving into supporting the system, which is Hillary Clinton. And it was so vicious that YouTube took it down, because it's the only time in my life I ever went on television and swore. I was so angry at him, because there's nothing worse than somebody who destroys your hope. So now here's one I do not understand. Why is he being resurrected, and why are so many people paying attention to him, and why is mainstream media giving him so much attention? My impression now of Bernie Sanders, he is like Satchel Paige. He was this great right-handed pitcher who could strike out 25 and 30 people in a game, won all kinds of games as a right-handed pitcher, could win Cy Young awards, okay? But then his right arm is amputated by an accident. And then a couple of years later, he comes out of the bullpen pen. He says, hey, I can now throw left-handed. And people are listening to him. Yeah. He can't strike out anybody left-handed.
Yeah, well, that's certainly an apt analogy. But yeah, I think people that young people, the reason that they're appeal to Sand, or even this AOC or anybody that's coming out now, they know. Millennials, I know, I have two of them, and I know lots of them, and they're getting a raw deal. This is the opportunities aren't there for them, so they know something's wrong between college, student loan debt, the massive immigration that is still visa workers that are coming in and lowering wages for them when they enter the job market, just the way it's hard to get any kind of a job now to get an opportunity, automation coming, all these things that no one's addressing, so they know something's wrong. So as Tucker Carlson, I actually like him, watching him on Fox, because he's got a little populist in him, and he's fond of telling his guests, you're bad-mouthing socialism, but you have to come up, what's your alternative? Because you're not offering him anything. So you have to come up with some kind of, and I think our leaders have to come up with something, because the natives are getting restless. I don't know if there's enough Americans that are ever going to get their yellow jackets out, but at some point you have to realize, okay, elections aren't working, because whoever we vote in doesn't actually.
If elections are not working, the Constitution and Bill of Rights call for the demonstration of massive civil disobedience. In the culture that we have today, years ago, a close friend of mine, Tom Brokaw, and co-worker at NBC, wrote a book about the Second World War called The Greatest Generation. I have suggested to him that he write a book about this generation of fake wars, called by far the most pathetic generation.
Yes, yeah.
The Vietnam War was not ended by our government or by any religious organizations or any media. It was ended by people voting with their feet by going to Chicago in 1968, because middle class and upper middle class people, all of these have disappeared in America, but their sons were coming home in body bags.
Yes, they were.
Now, the owners of the country, very smartly, they decided they'd have nothing but a volunteer army, so they signed NAFTA, send jobs overseas. They dumbed down Americans, so now the only place college graduates can find a job.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're down to 30 seconds or less. I want you to say what you need to at the end here, because it goes too fast with you. I know.
Okay, then the last thing I'll say is that was massive civil obedience. Americans are too lazy to do that now. If they feel that there is no choice put up by the two candidates in 220, they should boycott the election.
There you go. The great John Barbour. It went too fast. We'll have you back soon. We're always talking. I just cherish being able to know you. We'll be right back after these messages, Dustin. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Donald.
Hi, my name is Ella.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
And welcome back to the second hour of I Protest. We have another return guest today. Dustin Nemos is a very popular podcast host, and recently we're going to talk a lot about his association. He's one of the movers and shakers behind the phenomenon in the book industry of QAnon, an invitation to the Great Awakening, which, as I think the highest I saw it go up to was like number 4 overall of all Amazon books. I mean, that's it garnered so much attention and was selling so well that you had mainstream articles, pretty much attacking the book because it's considered obviously a conspiratorial type of thing, and Amazon isn't used to dealing with something like that being that high up there. So, Dustin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. It's good to see you again. It's been too long, and we actually, I think we hit number 2 overall.
Oh, okay.
And that was after they had dropped off like 300 or so reviews that were already verified purchases.
Wow.
And tinkered with the price and all this other stuff. So it was interesting for sure. It was my first book experience, and it's been a lot more blowback than I thought.
Well, not too many people, I can tell you from my books, not too many people have ever had, the highest, I think Hidden History got up to number 800 and something, which is really good on Amazon. But, to get up with their, we got excited. I got excited when my books would hit number 1 in a particular category, and then you can call it a bestseller. But you got up into New York Times bestseller territory. Now, I don't know if they ever admitted. Did you check the New York Times and see? Because something tells me they would just ignore it probably. Even though
I think they ignored it. I don't know. As far as I know, all of the big names attacked it. Even RT attacked it.
Oh, really?
So it was a strange overall experience.
Oh, that was. I'm
so
sorry
much
to hear.
hate for a book.
Yeah, well, it's again, that's and how that runs into. We've talked about this before, whether it's the JFK assassination research world, the 9/11 forums, any aspect of the alternative media. There's so much competition, and everybody thinks everybody else is a fake or a disinfo agent or something, and they have so many. I mean, RT, which I think is by far the best television network out there, still they probably don't like the QAnon stuff. So
they were a lot gentler.
Oh, they were a lot gentler? Okay.
Like they were more, they almost attacked the fake news as hard as they attacked the Q thing. So they they threw in some ridicule there, but they were going after the fake media as well. Yeah, well,
I've caveat here, I've been on there a few times myself. So, and I've been attacked, as if I was a Russian agent for being on RT. I said, look, no other television network would ask me on, so what am I supposed to do? I mean,
I wore one of those fancy Russian hats to keep your ears warm in winter one time. So I'm with you.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much, that's kind of the level now, I think. It's worse than it was back in the supposed witch hunt days. So tell us, this book, tell everybody a little bit about it. I mean, how did you, I assume you were one of the people that came up with the idea. Did you just put together a lot of the drops that Q has had, or was it analysis of it? What is the book about?
No, although there were some people out there, saying that we were doing this and just taking other people's drops or Q's drops and just basically making money on it or anything like that. No, these were our personal experiences. Like, for example, mine was how I made Alex Jones cry and how he lied about how I put out a kill hit on him. So these are not stories that someone else could tell. This is not a story Q told. This is my particular chapter of the book. But even beyond, I think that we really kind of ruffled some feathers when we broke out of YouTube and our internet ghetto, and we kind of snapped the chains for a minute. It's kind of like when the dog gets out on in a nice neighborhood. It's just
the Three Stooges interrupted the big debutante ball. Yeah.
What I like to say is that we in the alt media, this wasn't me. This was all of us. We just took territory. Like, we just sort of broke out of our, like I said, the internet ghetto they had us in. And we took territory and we claimed that. They can't take that away from us. And now I think really the magic of this book was not the book itself. It's the precedent, because now that we have learned, or at least now that I have learned, and I think others will take this precedent as well, that the alt media can get together, and we have weight when we get together. There's so many things that we could do with that, like maybe getting together and building a campaign behind a really good attorney going after censorship. Who knows, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, and that's why I think, yeah, and that's why I've been preaching this, whether it was way back when in the JFK assassination community about, kumbaya, and we all come together, and it's very difficult, and that's why you talk about a legal campaign. I had the attorney, Todd McMurtry, for Nicholas Sandman, one of the Covington, Kentucky kids, on a few weeks back on my show, and I was very proud. It was an exclusive interview. He didn't do any other interviews on these kind of podcasts or radio shows, and I'm very encouraged by what's going on there, because if they actually go after everybody, and they sound like they mean business. They've already gone after, they already notified Washington Post and CNN. They're going to go after Nathan Phillips. They're going to go after some of these other celebrities and some of the other big media. And this is what Alex Jones, you talked about him, what I never understood why he didn't do, because he has the millions to do it. And when people were unfairly calling him racist and nonsense, and now he's being sued for nonsense about saying Sandy Hook didn't happen, which he was never even extreme on that. But
I think he's actually gonna lose that. I think he's actually gonna probably drop the ball and lose it on purpose.
Oh, he's folding. Yeah, he's folding because he's not acting like someone would act. And obviously, okay, seen in that light, you look at, okay, is there something suspicious about him, because he was one of the people that was attacked so relentlessly. And now you have somebody like Jim Fetzer, who I know kind of from the JFK assassination days. He and Wolfgang, they're being sued as well. And they don't have anywhere near the resources that Alex Jones has, but they're saying bring it on. I mean, Fetzer's a lot of things, but he doesn't back down to anybody. And he may be deluded. I wish him well. But if we can win these kind of lawsuits, and I think, you get some of those people on the stand, and those things begin to fall apart. And certainly in the case of Nicholas Sandman, there's no defense for what happened to him. For this 16-year-old kid, they tried to ruin his life. They threatened him. They wanted to punch him in the face, run him and the kids through a wood chipper. So I think this is great, because it may cause them pause the next time when they decide to, and these are the same people that want to censor something that you would write or I would say. These are the first people that want to get people fired over what they say, and yet they think they can have carte blanche to attack a Catholic kid that's 16 years old, wearing a MAGA hat.
Agreed. No more. It has to stop. The precedents are there. The trends are there. All of these things that they're doing, like the Jussie Smolletts and the Sandmans and the Covington, all of that's fallen apart on them. I think that the energy's there. Even Trump is going after them for censorship. I think it's already, we just need to find a sharp attorney and shove him through the heart of censorship.
Well, let's hope that Todd McMurtry, and they have Lynn Wood, who's a very powerful attorney. He was Richard Jewell, the unfairly smeared. I don't know if you remember back in '96, he was smeared when he's actually a hero, and the media smeared him constantly and insinuated that he was the bomber at the Atlanta Olympics. And the stress killed him. He was only 44. He died of a heart attack, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But Lynn Wood was his attorney, so. He's got a lot of firepower, and I think those media organizations are shaking their boots. And that
is he the guy they call the attorney for the damned?
He may be. He's very he's like he's very distinguished Southerner, and if you see him, he's just he's just very impressive. He's got a track record, and he's somebody they can't ignore. And I was really shocked that they got somebody. And McMurtry's great. I mean, talking to him, he knows. We if you listen to the show we did, He's right on board with all the corruption that's going on, but I think he kind of took this case for something he agreed with. I think because it was kind of a labor of love or something, because he recognized what an injustice was. But I think that could be the first domino to fall, because if these media organizations and these celebrities lose or whatever in this kind of a case, I think that could and certainly if Wolfgang Halbig and Fetzer can somehow get that case dropped or win that's the dominoes fall if we can start winning.
Agreed. And also what's going on with Bayer Monsanto, another big case, another big precedent. I really do believe that we have
talk about. I mean, I've heard a little bit about that. You sound like you know more. Talk about the Monsanto case. So if you know the details?
Well, yeah. Okay. So everybody knows about Roundup Ready, weed killer. The glyphosate is really the main problem, or glyphosate, depending on how you pronounce it. That's the main problem ingredient. It's very toxic anyway, but it's finally being shown in courts that this stuff really does indeed cause cancer, and all of their junk government science is not going to cover it up anymore. They're actually getting hit for hundreds of millions in some cases, and now that one guy was able to get through, I think he managed a $300 million win. Now we have thousands and thousands of people signing up. I think over 8,000 have signed up for the same trial attorney, I think, just to go through and sue the junk out of them for poisoning the world. And this is Monsanto. You know, they created all the GMO, and then they were bought out by Bayer, and now the liability is even bigger.
Yes, Bill Gates is heavily invested in Monsanto as well, and that's awful. And the fact that Americans, one of the things about Vladimir Putin, I'm sure you know this, Putin, one of the things he did over there, this terrible guy, he banned all GMO products from Russia, along with some of other moves. So why that's not happening in America, I don't know, but we're clearly, that's great if that can happen. And I don't know if you've heard also, there's the first 3 or 4 doctors doing what I've long suspected, and I've had no proof, but I've long suspected that lots of diagnoses by medical professionals in the West are fake. They're designed, and we've had 3 or 4 doctors now that have, and I think it's a domino effect. I think you're going to see, I don't believe for a second that they're isolated. They've come out and admitted that they gave out untold number of fake cancer diagnoses to patients for decades.
Yes.
And a couple of them are already going in trial, so that domino could fall, because if you get all the doctors that did that, you know, imagine that. There's no defense for that at all, and I can't think of an adequate punishment for it. But so, yeah, good thing if we can. But of course, then we have to depend on the court system too, and you have to, you know, then you know, can they do the right thing? I don't know.
This is one of those things that's really close to my heart, because about a third of what I focus on is health. Mm-hmm. Because I saw my grandparents and my family and others waste away these cancer drugs, you know, basically cut, poison, burn.
Yeah,
that's all they really know, and expensive drugs that just destroy them and wear them out, and you end up, you know, my poor grandmother's skin is so thin that she gets just cut so easily and barely heals anymore because of all the drugs they have her on, and they killed my grandfather with those things. So I really, really do want to give people better alternatives that they can kind of use for themselves. So I've kind of focused a lot of my efforts there, at least in terms of information for people. Because
absolutely, the Apex. I mean, I've been advertising it. In fact, I guess I can read it now. I mean,
Sure.
I've already had some people obviously that have ordered through me, but Dustin sells Apex Health products, and these are. Yeah. You'll find a lot of these, and it's not, and I think he can certainly tell you more specifically about them, but you'll notice that this is where it's on in alternative broadcasts like this, or Dustin's, even Alex Jones, people like that, they are Natural News, all that. They understand that there's a market out there, because people know how bad that big pharma is. Mm-hmm. And how disastrous our medical industrial complex is. So I just quickly give if and you can tell more about it, but if you would listen to what Dustin has to say about it, and if you want to try these products out, which are all natural, good for your body, go to apexhealth.club/Donald Jeffries. That's my link, so I would get credit for it. But Dustin, tell more exactly about the products and
mainly, I was kind of, I wasn't even going to go into like a commercial, but I will talk about some of the products in just a second. But I mainly wanted to basically say that these people, the medical health mafia, you know, a lot of those doctors really do mean well, but their entire education system from, you know, kindergarten all the way up to the end of med school is controlled by the same people that control, you know, everything else, big pharma types. So they're not going to be able to offer anything to people, and yet people still trust them. They trust authority, and that is a problem. And what I want to do, my real goal is to teach people how to do most of this themselves. There's not everything that you can, but not everything you need to buy. I mean, you can really do a lot of this yourself. You can go back to like the old way of having the right things and the right foods mainly at home. To deal with your own problems. That's kind of just a smarter general practice to live, and it's cheaper, and it's faster, and it builds the body up rather than all of these liver toxic drugs.
Have you heard of Dr. Joel Wallach, who wrote Dead Doctors Don't Lie? I'm trying to get him on the show, and I actually talked to him on the phone. I don't know if he's ever going to get back to me, but there are people out there. There's another one called You Are the Placebo. And these books sell well, and they're trying to show not only the importance of mind and kind of understanding so many of these things are from stress that especially in the times we live in now, are so stressful, and full of anxiety, and stress can cause just about anything on its own. But doctors take advantage of this because they're like, let's face it, if everyone that comes through your office in a day gets a clean bill of health, you're not going to stay in business too long. Eventually, that's the,
Sure.
it's like if you take your car in and there's never any problems. And so, and big pharma, they all have connections to this where even if they don't want to, a lot of times they have to be connected to big pharma, and that's part of the problem. But and somebody like selling these products or natural products, that is a way to combat them head to head. Just stop interacting with the medical industrial. I worked for the medical industrial complex for 44 years. In IT mostly, but still I saw it up close and personal, and I could, that's a book maybe down the road. I could tell
Sure.
people stories they would not believe. It's you say you work at a restaurant, you see how the food's being made. Well, if you see this stuff in action, it's just amazing.
It's an incentive thing, right? You have to consider the incentive. They get paid based off of your ongoing maintenance.
Sure.
Not like, customers, not cures. It would really, like you say, hurt their business model to help you in that way. Now, someone like myself or yourself with these other products through Apex, which is a great company that basically sponsors truthers and has the best quality health products. When something like that, you're getting more of a preventative maintenance. So it's good, and it can be a recurring source of income as far as a business goes. But really, like they have $1 trillion industry in just like hip fractures and stuff. It's one of the big things for them, money income. I would just give people borax, and you can buy that from Walmart. And that's actually safer than salt, although there's a lot of controversy around taking borax. If you think that it bothers you, you can just buy the cheap boron pills, which are pure, and they're quite affordable. But most people don't get enough of that, and it really helps with the bones. And, I don't make claims, but that's $1 trillion industry that we don't need. Let's put it that way. If you go back to do the research on Dr. Newnham, he had some amazing, remarkable results for many areas, but especially things like that, bone-related, hip, especially age-related bone. Just one of those things that's really strong in, and it's almost free, and it's safer than salt on the toxicity scale. So you can actually take that in the right way. Of course, you have to do your research on it and get the right formulas and such. And that's something that I make no money on, but it helps a lot of people, and it cuts $1 trillion out of there. All we have to do is spread the news on that. Now, there are some other things that maybe you don't want to make at home. That's where Apex comes in, but it's mainly about teaching people about this stuff. That's how it started. And some of those products, I have an affiliate link to Amazon for borax, but it's so cheap. I mean, just Walmart, right? But some of those products that I do have, like liposomal vitamins and stuff, 25 times. It depends on the vitamin, of course, because each one varies. But 20, 25 times more absorbable than a typical vitamin because they're wrapped in fat. They go right into your blood. I mean, what kind of value is that? Yeah, that's amazing.
There's so many things, the simple things that people can do. Just reading the labels, ingredient labels, and understanding that the deadly preservatives like BHA and BHT that are in everything unnecessarily. A lot of kids cereals all have that, which makes, and you can get things like Quaker 100% natural. It has BHA and BHT. Talk about a misleading. So just looking at that and understanding, okay, don't eat awful things like margarine, fake butter, things like that, or just and understanding iodine that we're lacking. You talk about a conspiracy. For years when I was a kid, when nobody understood the importance of iodine, I guess then, but it was always iodized salt when you bought it. Now, iodine has been taken out of salt. Now, I don't think there's no reason for that unless they deliberately want to withhold something, a nutrient that's essential.
They were actually the average IQ of the whole nation was going up when they had the salt in the iodine in the salt, and that was the cheap stuff. I sell the Lugol stuff, which is the best you can get.
Yes, I have. Yes, and that's something like that. Okay, you can look at. Is that also part and parcel with when salt was still iodized? I was already hearing that way back in the day that they were telling you the dangers of salt. Now, a couple of years, maybe a year or two ago, medical science admitted that there is no correlation between all the diseases they claim salt exacerbated and all the patients there's no correlation between the high blood pressure, stroke, and all that they claim.
I love salt.
No, I love it too. It's essential. I mean, I never bought into it. But just how many people did buy into that? And I've tried to tell people, and they still are reluctant because of decades of propaganda. And that's the stuff you face, is that it's that white coat mentality, the normalcy bias is that if they tell you something, then you have to believe. So people like us that are trying to to sell them on these alternative things that are all natural. I mean, just got to tell you, if it's natural, it's better. That should make sense to everyone.
Well, the thing is about it is just that people need to look around. They need to look at the people that they are around. Everybody knows somebody's got cancer or sick or something. Yeah. Look at the decisions they're making. Look at the people that they're trusting with their health and ask, are you trusting the same people as they are?
Well, Joel Wallach claims, and if I ever have him on the show, he made the unbelievable claim that doctors have a much lower life expectancy than the average person, which I find unbelievable. But
there's actually, to that point, there's actually a correlation between the amount of money that's spent, like more upper class people on healthcare in this country versus more health problems. I don't remember the exact details, but it was really fascinating to see that people who can afford more healthcare get sicker.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I'm 62. I don't take any pharma medications. I never have. And I'm very few people my age are in that boat. I mean, everyone I talk to does. And it just, once you get hooked on it, then it's, and if you watch the commercials now and once in a while the TV's on, I see commercials, and I'm astonished at how every commercial almost is about ask your doctor, tell your doctor, talking about side effects, and they're advertising some big pharma product. And I don't know why anybody would take any of them just listening to the potential side effects. It's like, what?
Flesh-eating genital virus. One I saw.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, what? Jeez. I mean, and just they'll say, ask your gastroenterologist. Like you should have all these different doctors you're going to, and it's like, geez, people, come on.
I got to say, I think it's a sign. I think that the old system is truly dying. And I think this whole movement is really built. I'm personally building new systems to replace some of that stuff. And it's very appropriate that most of their commercials deal in death and sickness and disease, because it's exactly the kind of world that they've created. And I think that we all just need to drop the TV and move to the internet and actually go to people who are patriots and tell the truth and have kind of a track record of integrity.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you're exactly right, because at this point, I don't know why, and it gets into the whole, me. I'm a populist, and I'm probably more on the left. At least historically, I would have considered more on the left. But I argue so much with people on the left, especially since Trump was elected, with the Russian collusion stuff, how they were suddenly willing to accept all these people who they know. I mean, somebody like Mueller, who is one of the guys I've had on the show, John Milkovich, wrote a book called Robert Mueller, Errand Boy for the New World Order. And he really has that kind of track record. I mean, this guy's been involved covering up 9/11 and going way back to everything. And these people knew that. The leftists knew it and understood that he was a bad guy. But suddenly, because he came in, and then, that he was going after Trump. So anybody that does that is a good guy suddenly. Same thing with all the intelligence agencies. So they understood how corrupt why would anybody trust these intelligence agencies based on their track record? And yet, Trump is a wild card, and I've been disappointed by him so many times, and I still don't know what to think of him. But he's still kind of an unknown quantity, where what you're getting with all his enemies have a track record. And why anybody would trust him, I have no idea. But it's, I guess it's Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, I don't know. I think most of the bad stuff he's done, we're actually just kind of feinting or outsmarting the enemy. And honestly, I think he's been through the gauntlet now. If he had been a bad guy, we would have found out something. So I think he's actually the real deal, and that's why he has the enemies he has,
Well, I one thing I've said over and over again is, no matter how many times I criticized him, one thing I've found, writing hidden history and kind of exploring the backgrounds of all these other presidents, and Trump is, other than Jimmy Carter, who seemed like a pretty decent moral guy personally, Trump is one of the few. One of the few I've seen that doesn't have a body count. I can't find any, which all these other presidents have extensive body counts.
Despite his involvement with people like Cohen, which is kind of funny, right? Like you'd expect there to be at least something, somebody like double-crossed him or something.
Doing real estate in New York. I don't know how but I mean, if they're there, and I can't believe the media that hates him so much wouldn't be exposing that. So if it's there, it's buried pretty deep. So I think that's one good thing he's got going for him. And
well, you ever heard the expression you can't swing a stick without hitting something?
Yeah.
In this case, you can't swing a flashlight without hitting corruption from somebody in the cabal or globalist, whatever. So they're not going to point in a lot of areas, even if Trump did have something, which I doubt he does.
Oh yeah, I don't think they want to expose anything that they're involved in. That's whether it was this Jeffrey Epstein and Lolita Island, because they know the Clintons were involved in that, and some of the other powerful people were. So if Trump knew them, they're not going to go there, because it's certainly so many other powerful people that.
Yeah, and people like Rachel Chandler that are going to eventually, like, that name's not popular yet, but eventually that will come out.
Right. Hold that thought. We're going to be right back after these with a couple messages. We'll be right back.
But we all cheered wildly. A photograph was taken. She waved a piece of paper in the air.
No hate, no hype. No fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
Coming down the street, you're coming right down the middle. You gotta keep the beat, but as blue as the ocean. How the sun shines.
And welcome back to I Protest. We're talking with the guy I consider to be one of the brightest lights, a young man in the entire alternative media right now, Dustin Nemos. So, Dustin, let's you it sounds like you have a lot of interest. You're focused a lot on health, as you say, and you're obviously involved with the QAnon movement, following that and reporting on that. What other stuff are you working on, or what did you want to talk about?
Well, I want to solve problems. I want to help people, and I'm entrepreneurial by nature, and I always try to figure out how to do it in kind of a win-win way with sort of capitalism and finding a way that everybody goes home happy. And I like to do it. I have a sort of a focus on buy cheap, buy twice. So I like quality and I like value and stuff like that. So really, I've got plans that involve different kinds of businesses that maybe can help solve people's problems, but at the point right now, I want to organize something against censorship. I want to get a campaign going and sign up people who are influencers who are willing to help promote, and push through an attorney to actually get something. I want to help other influencers, maybe who are struggling and such, who don't have a good grasp on the business side of things, or maybe even being taken advantage of on some of the deals they're making. There's so many passions I have, and I want to help people, and that's basically kind of where I'm at. And there's just a lot of things that are coming that I've got on a list right now, and a team, and we're going to go through that list at some point and start enacting those things. It's just we have been overwhelmed, and it's such a small group right now working with.
Well, censorship, and that's a very important issue too. And I would love to see Trump. As much as he rails against the media, I would love to see him finally focus on the people who have really been censored. And that's not the kind of Fox News type, the Judge Jeanine type of cutouts that really are not. They're not preaching any kind of truth. I would like to have him focused on all the YouTube channels that have been shut down, YouTube censorship especially. I would like to see him mention Alex Jones, because Alex Jones, whatever his faults and how sincere he was, nobody can claim he didn't support Donald Trump to a fault. I would like.
But for a while. But I feel like there was, a caveat there was that he would do the build up, he would gain the support, and then he would break out with those days where he would say like "F Trump" and "F his family."
Oh
and all
yeah,
this other stuff.
He did that, and I think that was theatrics. But I think it's just important because if he's not going to mention Alex Jones, whose show he was on, he's certainly not going to mention you or SGT Report. or me or anybody like that, anybody that faces the censorship that is lesser known. Alex Jones was a name,
Sure.
so I would like to see him at least have mentioned him, or I heard Mike, God, what's the guy's name from Natural News? Mike Adams. Mike Adams, I think that's been deplatformed, I've heard from it, including PayPal. Again, why is PayPal getting away with doing this? It's nothing to do with politics. They're just a money instrument. Why that makes no sense why there's any politics involved.
Yeah, and Patreon, PayPal, they're all doing it. And I was kicked off of. I've been kicked off PayPal. I've been kicked off of GoFundMe. I've been kicked off of YouTube.
Oh, jeez, and that's outrageous. And again, there are no civil libertarians, so nobody on the left is going to do it. Maybe Cynthia McKinney, if she was still there, would do it. But there's nobody else in Congress that's going to do it. Maybe Rand Paul. I'd like to see him stand up for something like that. But I don't understand why that's Trump's wheelhouse, and that's the kind of stuff he does. He could at least rant about it on Twitter. I mean, I don't really expect him to. I don't know what he can do, really. But
he has done a couple of rants. He's got a flashlight, and then I think now we organize, we get an attorney, and maybe he'll put his flashlight on it if we can get big enough.
I'd love to see that because it's I get when Alex Jones was the first blow. I think they went after the biggest name, and when they got rid of him everywhere, I realized, this is it's because he's a huge name. If they can get rid of him, they can get rid of a lot of smaller people. And I was saying, look, this got nothing to do with Alex Jones, supporting him or not. And of course, the left hates Alex Jones now because of his support for Trump, and they're associating with him. But I just said, this is, they're going to sooner or later they're going to deplatform someone you don't like, and they started making the ridiculous argument for the left of this is a private company. And I go, come on, that's what the civil rights movement was about. It's a private company, but in today's world, YouTube, Facebook, they're like the town crier. They're a public platform that you need.
Yeah, but further than that, private company or not, you can't say I'm a private company, no blacks allowed.
Exactly.
And you can't say no conservatives allowed either. We're the majority of the country.
Right. I mean, they're going to have no conspiracy theorists need apply signs, but we set that precedent because the left is the greatest service that Trump is just inadvertently or not, by being elected, he has brought out the roaches into the light. They are all out there to see how deranged I don't even call them the left, but whatever you call them, the pussy hat wearers are out there. They are so deranged now with their authoritarianism, and they want to shut everyone down. And I've gotten in so many arguments with them when they're throwing Sarah Huckabee Sanders or someone I really don't like at all, Ted Cruz, when they're harassing him out of a restaurant. I said, look, this is what the civil rights movement was fought for, so that people had a right to eat in a restaurant. You can't just throw somebody out. How are you okay with that? Because you don't like who they work for or they're political. What does that have to do with them eating? But they're okay with that. And it's scary times because they don't see the inconsistency there either. They'll still talk about the civil rights movement, which literally involved sit-ins at lunchroom counters. It's like, hello, how is that not the same thing? Well, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, way different than, well, no, because how are political beliefs any different than, unless you're spouting them off in there, maybe I can understand that if you're distracting the cup, but if you're just trying to eat dinner somewhere, it shouldn't matter what your, I would be happy to eat alongside lone nutters in the JFK assassination. I think they're ridiculous, but I'm not going to say you can't eat here. Well,
hate doesn't need a lot of excuse, and it doesn't need. You also don't need a lot to realize that it's hate. Who's going after who's pushing for who to have like negative consequences of an unfair and immoral sort, who's trying to shut down free speech. Who are the ones doing these things universally? It's always the left. And who's doing all the violence? Like what is it? Like 100-to-1 ratio or 200-to-1 ratio, where the violence is actually from the left.
Well, I wrote an article recently. If you get a chance to read it, Lou Rockwell, who publishes a lot of my stuff, published it, and it was called Nazi, the slur that everyone loves. And I talked about how people drop this Nazi name for everything now, anybody. And I talked about how long real Nazis have been dead for, and it's ridiculous to keep using that term so provocatively. And what I really hate is this violent stuff where there's a whole meme now, punch a Nazi in the face. And there are people, I quoted a survey that was published, the majority of Democrats 51% of the people said it was okay to punch a Nazi in the face. I mean, that breaks down all civil society when you can just go.
That leads to hashtag hunt Republicans.
Yes, I mean, you can't just go. How do you have any respect for any kind of law if you can just walk up and punch somebody in the face because you don't like what they're saying? I thought we recognized that was wrong a long time ago. And certainly, can you imagine if somebody walked up and punched an abortionist in the face or something? I mean, that would be a public outcry. So again, it's inconsistency, and it's scary.
It desensitizes such dirty words as Nazi and evil, terms like that, because you're just throwing it around at good people. Now words don't make sense anymore, and they have no meaning.
No, exactly. And that was the whole purpose of the article. They use it. It's a catch-all for everything. And Alex Jones used to do it from the right. He was constantly talking about Nazis. It just drive me crazy. Why do these people keep bringing up Nazis? And my book coming up, that's coming out in June, we'll talk a lot about that. About how certainly the history going back to the 1776, how we've been lied to so much as I showed in Hidden History that we've been lied to so much since the JFK assassination. This is an earlier period, but that's the problem that we have to face is you need more people from the alt, whether you call it the alt-right or so-called. I mean, I don't even like the term conservative
just truth
anymore.
People.
Yeah, truth. Yeah, because conservatives, I think it designates that you're trying to conserve something, and I can understand maybe when America was America 1.0, when it was a different America, there was a lot of good to conserve there. I don't see much of anything today that any reasonable person would want to conserve. I mean, we're becoming a third world country. I don't want to conserve that. But so I wish people, I think alt-right's a better term, or just truth or truth.
I want to conserve the people that we can conserve from the left.
Yeah. That's I don't know. Do you think that? What do you see happening? Because I really. Thinking of 2020, what happens after that? That's if Trump is reelected, which could easily happen. If Trump is reelected, how will the pussy hat wearers? I mean, they might just go completely full on deranged at that point. I don't think they'll be able to take 4 more years of that. And if he's defeated, and one of these awful Democrats, unless it's someone who seems better like a Tulsi Gabbard, which has no chance, but if it's any of the other people they're talking about, get in there. How will the people that are looking to try to get rid of this corruption react? Because it's just going to be more of the same.
When Trump wins 2020, when, not if, because honestly, I'm an investment logic kind of guy. I don't mess off emotions. I go off of kind of trends and such, or you lose money. I really honestly see it as when. I think then he's going to shift into doing a lot of the stuff that we need done in terms of the healthcare reform, that real healthcare reform, like getting big pharma off of our backs and poisoning us, vaccines, that kind of thing. I think at that point he will be able to shift into making the world a better place. Right now, he's trying to get the bad guys off of our back, and that's a different thing entirely.
Well, there's so many bad guys, and I'm just afraid of, because as I said, his election has. We always kind of knew that obviously Hollywood was way left, but he's brought out the deranged. It's really I believe most mental illnesses are fake, and I don't like but Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing because it's brought that out. And if you turn on CNN or something, and I can't watch it, but once in a while if I'm in a public place, it'll be on, and it's torture. I mean, they really should use that. If they bring back torture, they wouldn't have to do anything other than just put CNN on to watch people, because watching that is torture to any kind of intelligent individual. I mean, it's just watching a Don Lemon or Chris Cuomo. These guys, they don't even try to pretend for a second. I mean, they are just so over the top with they're not even reporting the news, but so how would they all, I think obviously the election of Trump took them all by surprise. So they certainly were downcast and disenchanted, but how would the re-election of a Trump? I mean, I would almost expect them not to cover it, much as when Bill Clinton was impeached back in the late 90s, where the television networks didn't cover a historical event like that. They literally didn't cover the impeachment trial. It was incredible. But I think they would react that way to the re-election of Trump.
Well, they can't do much. All they can do is kick and scream, because we have the military, the army, and most of the population, and all the guns, and all of the muscles, and it basically really does unfortunately come down to that at the end of the day. Trump has what he needs to do this. It's not like they have a choice.
Yeah, no, I'm looking on. I'm trying to look on the chat room, see if there are any kind of they're just kind of trying to see if there's anything special on there. Anybody, until I can figure out how to take calls on this show, if you have any questions, you can ask me through the chat here. But yeah, I just kind of it's an exciting time, and in many ways, this is a really exciting time because there's such a dichotomy between the people that are being awake, the red pill versus blue pill, and the people that are still asleep, because the more and more people are waking up, and once they awake, they're open to so many possibilities. I mean, that's why you see everything, from flat Earth to hollow Earth to we're living in a simulation. I mean, all this stuff, because they realize we've been lied to about everything, so now anything's fair game. I'm not trusting anybody.
Now we have what we're about to have. We don't even really have it yet. We've started to taste it, but all the censorship. We're about to have a free market of ideas where people can actually go out and see everything that's out there and actually make up their own mind based on the merit and the arguments. And that's going to be a pretty precious thing. And just like the free market, it will drive the price down with products and things of that nature. Like, cell phones keep getting cheaper and faster, like with computers and stuff. Well, it's going to be that way for ideas. They're going to get more honed. They're going to get easier to understand. Everyone's going to be able to sort of sample and appreciate everything and get the truth faster, easier, better because of the free market of ideas. We have to get the censorship off our backs first, and then everything else falls into place.
Well, if you had, just imagine if you had shows like we have or that we know of that are out there. If you had those shows on mainstream television, although they're getting smaller audiences now, but if you had this kind of alternative perspective available to the millions and millions of people that are still consuming the old dinosaur media, imagine the impact it would have, because CNN can't hold a candle to any halfway decent podcast out there that's preaching any kind of truth. It's just because people know when they're sitting there and you're talking and you're just obviously dissecting the latest incident or whatever, or just talking about any subject, and you're not using the same absurd talking points that state-run news does, then people are going to react to that. Oh yeah, but there's so many people still, if they don't see it on their TV, they're still going to say, well, although more people are going to the internet. But I think if we could, just imagine if a Trump type had a network, just a major television network like that, like an RT, even something like RT, which has a lot of good stuff. If they could be on every cable network, every cable lineup, satellite lineup, I think I don't think the other networks could compete with anything like that.
I'm working on building that, called the Nemos News Network. It's just going to take time.
Oh, that would be. I like that. NNN. Oh, that would be wonderful. I hope you remember me if you go there.
Yeah, the secret is that, one, Nemos means no one. So it's kind of like the Anon News Network, which is sort of a hat tip to the Anon community and what we've done with QAnon. But really, it's the business plan is to leverage existing influencers and bring them in. Oftentimes, these are people who are working their butts off nonstop, 100 hours a week, like I've done, like you've probably done, trying to get the truth out there, often not making any money at all, or like worried about bills or stressing and unable to focus. Right. I want to take those people and I want to hire them or bring them in or support them or sponsor them or something. And I want to use these good quality products that I've developed with these different companies on the side, stuff that I've vetted that I know is good, that's not like immoral and isn't going to hurt people or anything like that, and won't be sold by an immoral company like Google or something that says don't be evil, but that's all they do. So, which is exactly what evil would say, is don't be evil. Right. Anyway, so I want to take these ideas and I want to leverage existing people, bring them in, grow something very quickly, organically, and virally at the same time. And I think that within a very short time span, once we do the networking and get everything figured out, we can actually take and build something as big as any of those guys that's focused on truth and has integrity.
Well, I don't doubt you, and nobody should doubt you after the success of the QAnon book. I mean, because I don't think anybody could have. To foresee that it would almost go up to the total top of all Amazon. I mean, Amazon has maybe 10, 11, 12 million books at least.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Well, I believe truly in the art of war, and I want to have victory assured before I even lift my pen to write a book. And that's kind of what we accomplished here, and that's what I want to do for these other projects like the Nemos News Network, and actually take these guys to task for all of their deception. You know, Trump is doing his part, but we kind of have to do ours as well. We can't just wait around on it.
No, we can't. I think, you and I probably disagree on Trump's performance, but I like John Barbour, who was on the first hour. And by the way, John Barbour is still very high on you, and he hopes he can get back on your show. So I'm supposed to pass that message to him.
We're having him on soon. Actually, we're going to have kind of a get together with a few people and talk some JFK stuff and some books and stuff like that. I've got it booked sometime next week, I think. Cool,
that's good. Well, he'd be happy to hear that, but. He feels the same way I do. You know, we're rooting for. I mean, everything Trump promised to do that was populist in nature, that were things that were long over, and he was just talking about things that blue collar workers and average people have been talking about for decades, about the way America was drifting in the wrong direction, not left right, but just drifting down. The infrastructure completely crumbling, so that it looks like a third world now. The massive immigration that no one was doing anything about. These are, like I said, if he does nothing else, I don't even. I'm very big, obviously, on wanting to end the endless wars and bring all the troops home. I really want that, but domestically, we've got to do something about immigration, and we have to do something about the infrastructure. Those are, if Trump doesn't accomplish something on immigration, it's lost. Because it's the barn doors. Pretty much was let open a long time ago. I don't. It's a massive task, but they have to do something about it. People don't realize how many people are crossing that border every day, and the fact that the left, again, that hate Trump, they've personalized it with him, but they are just out of their minds now. They want to literally get rid of ICE. They want illegals to vote. I mean, this is absolute craziness because you're not a sovereign nation anymore. But I don't understand where their minds are, and I think so much of it is their hatred of Trump. I don't know how much they really feel that philosophically, but if they do, I don't know what kind of.
Well, there's two sorts of mindsets out there. There's the one, in business where you build a business up, or maybe you buy a business and you build it up and you offer a good thing, you do the right thing and you build it up long term, you develop a reputation, all that. And then there's the one where you go into an existing business. You tear it down, you do some sort of like hostile takeover, you tear it down, you scrap it out for parts, you make a bunch of money, and you send a bunch of people out of work. And that's, I think, the kind of attitude that many of these guys have, like the Hillary Clinton types. And they were just selling out our country, piece by piece for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, and if any readers that have read Hidden History have told me, I mean, it's a timeline. It just shows you what has happened in my lifetime since the JFK assassination. And the one after another, the dominoes that fell that all led and contributed to this, and whether it's Donald Trump or anybody else, it is a massive, almost supernatural undertaking that we need, because the corruption is so deep in America now. The corruption at all levels, from local school boards on up. I mean, you would need the world's biggest vacuum cleaner to get rid of it all. I mean, it's so bad and so permeating. That's why when we're talking about the courts, we have to hope that that you can get these cases that could be, huge for a cause of truth and liberty and good and just justice. If they can get in the right courtrooms, then obviously great strides can be made, because you can really chip away at this massive authoritarian Goliath that's on top of us, this tyranny that is like nothing. America is like nothing the founders. Just think the founding fathers. I quote from the Declaration of Independence in Hidden History, and I talk about what they talk about, a series of of events that a pattern of tyranny. I mean, just they were talking about nothing, child's play. Talk about a series of tyrannical events and a pattern. What have we faced in the last 60 years especially? It's been unbelievable, and I don't know how anyone cannot fail to see that. I mean, how many times do we have to be fooled before at some point we put the yellow jackets on and kind of emulate what's been done in France?
Well, you know what? You sound like my buddy Stephen Frog, and I agree to some extent. And, I'll ask, if you want, I'll put you on the list for people that support, influencers that support this idea of maybe coming together and doing some sort of campaign, kind of a Knights of the Round Table get together, and we sort of find a good attorney. I've got a few actually that are talking to me, kind of some pointers and such at least. And we'll shape up something and get behind it and push it as a campaign, as a group, if possible. So, if you're interested in that, let's talk off chat, and we'll figure something out.
Sure. I'm everything I do, everything I write and say, it's because I do have concern about the country. I have children. I hope to have grandchildren someday.
Yeah.
I don't want them to grow up in a third world. I don't want them to live in a third world country. And unless things are changed dramatically, I don't see how that's going to be avoidable, because every action that we're taking and everything Trump has tried to do that is good, he's met with resistance by all that corruption that's everywhere. So it's like a force field. So but a movement could get. Now, of course, we see in France, we talk about the Yellow Jackets, but now they're really being cracked on. Macron and they're really cracking down on them. So I don't know. I don't know if you can get any kind of.
Well, I'm thinking more of a sort of an endorsement from various people who are like, I will support this if we can get an attorney to take it.
Oh, sure.
When we hit a certain number of of public figures, popular support, we hit the on switch and we shop for attorneys and we say, look, we have 1 million subscribers between us and we are ready to push this thing and get behind you 110%. And we need help. We are being censored. We are being cut off. We are the last line of free speech on the internet.
Absolutely.
And I think if we did that, we could reach 10, 20 million people before we even go to the attorney. And honestly, I think we can have victory assured before we even lift the pen. Art of War.
Well, I would certainly hope that, and I'd certainly support that. I don't know how anybody could not support, because internet and the internet is the last bastion of hope as far as media. It's the main reason that people have woken up is because of the internet. I don't think it would have happened if we didn't have the internet since the 90s. That's when the entire movement of people waking up and understanding the extent of the corruption is because of that. We have less than a minute left. Anything that you want to talk about or promote in closing?
Yeah, I mean, you can get the book on both apexhealth.club through your link, which of course you get a affiliate link for. So I encourage that. But for people who don't understand like the health aspect, because it's not a health book, it's also on DustinNemos.com. And your link is the apexhealth.club/Donald Jeffries.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that's it. Get the book if you're interested. You don't have to. If you buy it from one of those websites, it comes with my autograph. And thank you so much for having me on.
Wonderful, and it's always a pleasure, Dustin. People, go to look at his videos on his podcast, buy his products, use my link if you can, and help me out too. Wonderful friend of the show, Dustin Nemos. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be talking again. Thank you.
Be well.